Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me. I never considered myself the type to notice the small things, the unspoken words, the quiet shifts in behavior. I was always too busy, too focused on the bigger picture. Life was moving at such a pace that I just let things unfold, assuming they'd work out as they always had. But sometimes, things don't just work out, and it's only when everything falls apart that you realize the cracks were there all along. It wasn't until one evening, a completely ordinary, seemingly normal evening, that I stumbled upon the truth. I remember it as clearly as if it happened yesterday. The kids had just gone to bed, and the house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of the TV from the living room. Mara, my wife, had been acting strangely for a while now, but I never really pressed her about it. There were signs, sure, small things like how she would often glance at her phone when I was around, how she seemed distracted, distant. But I was busy, and I convinced myself that she was just tired from work or that life had caught up with us. But that night was different. I had stayed up later than usual, going through some paperwork in the kitchen. The clock ticked past midnight, and I finally decided to head to bed. As I walked down the hallway, I heard her voice, but it wasn't the voice I had come to know. It wasn't the voice of the woman I had married, the woman who used to greet me with a smile at the end of a long day. Her tone was cold, sharp even, like she was speaking to someone she didn't care about. My first instinct was to retreat, to leave the conversation private, but then I heard a word that made me freeze in my tracks. Temporary. She said it so casually, as if the word was just another part of the conversation. I didn't know who she was speaking to, but it didn't matter. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. Temporary. That was the word that echoed in my mind. I couldn't move. I didn't want to hear more, but something inside me told me I had to. I had to hear what she was saying. I don't know how long I can keep doing this, Mara's voice continued. He's so predictable, so easy, but he's just a temporary option. I'm not really sure what I'm waiting for, but I can't keep pretending. I don't even know if I care anymore. The words stung like nothing I'd ever felt before. She wasn't talking about me. She was talking about us. She was talking about our life, about our marriage, as if it was a disposable thing, something to throw away when it no longer suited her. I leaned against the doorframe, my breath shallow. I felt like I was going to collapse. My hands clenched at my sides. She had no idea I was standing there, listening to every word. I could barely process what was happening, but I knew one thing for certain. Everything had just changed. The conversation continued, and I stood there, rooted to the spot, unable to move. I feel guilty, you know, Mara said, her voice quieter now. But it's not like he's ever going to figure it out. He's too trusting, too naive. I can keep doing this for as long as I want. I don't even know if I want to stay with him anymore, but I can't leave him yet. Not until I figure it out. I could barely breathe as I heard those words. She didn't even see me as a person anymore. I was a placeholder, a convenience. I had given everything to this marriage, to this family, and she was talking about me like I was nothing. But then came the final blow, the words that shattered any last illusion I had about our relationship. He'll never suspect a thing. He's too easy to fool. He thinks everything's fine, that I'm happy, but it's not real. None of it is. I felt my legs give out beneath me, and I sank to the floor. I wanted to scream, to run into the room and confront her, but I couldn't. I couldn't face her after hearing that, after hearing her so callously talk about me like I was nothing. I stayed in the hallway for what felt like hours, my mind spinning, trying to make sense of what had just happened. How long had this been going on? Had she been thinking this way for months? How many times had I looked her in the eyes and missed the truth? I could hear her in the other room, still talking, but the words were lost to me now. My heart was racing, and the anger I felt was overwhelming. But there was something else too, something deeper. I had been living a lie. I had been living in a bubble that I now realized was completely false. And then, in that moment, something inside me snapped. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't be in this house, in this life, with her any longer. I stood up slowly, my hands shaking, my thoughts a blur. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know where I was going. But I couldn't stay. I couldn't breathe in this place anymore, knowing what I now knew. Without a word, I turned around, grabbed a bag, and left. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream or cry. I just left. I didn't even know where I was going, but I knew one thing. She would never expect this. She would never expect me to walk away without a word. And that's when the real shock began. I don't know how long I sat there in my car, parked a few blocks away from the house, but it felt like an eternity. The city lights blurred as I stared out the window, my mind a storm of conflicting emotions. Anger, betrayal, confusion. I had never imagined that something like this could happen to me, to us. We were supposed to be a team, a family. We had built this life together. Yet here I was, driving away from it all, without even a word. The worst part? I wasn't even sure what I was supposed to do next. I couldn't go back to that house. I couldn't look at her, not after hearing those words. But at the same time, I felt a strange sense of calm. A part of me felt like I had been given a freedom I never knew existed. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have anywhere to go. But I knew one thing. I couldn't just slip back into the life I had been living before. I had to do something. I ended up in a cheap motel on the edge of town. It wasn't much, but it was a place to breathe, to think. I spent the next few hours pacing the small room, feeling the weight of the reality I had just uncovered pressing down on me. My phone buzzed several times, texts from Mara, but I couldn't bring myself to look at them. I knew she was probably trying to cover her tracks, to figure out where I was, to explain herself. But there was no explanation that could make up for what I had just heard. I went to bed that night with no answers, no closure, just a deep, empty feeling in the pit of my stomach. The next morning, I woke up to more texts, a missed call, and an email. All of them from Mara. The first text was simple. Where are you? The second one was more frantic. Evan, please. Let's talk. I'm sorry. And then the email, titled We Need to Talk. It was a long, apologetic message, begging for forgiveness, asking for a chance to explain. I knew I should have just ignored her. I knew I shouldn't have cared about her words. But I couldn't help myself. I opened the email. I never meant for you to find out like this, she wrote. I'm so sorry, Evan. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I could manage everything, but I see now I was wrong. Please, let me explain. I still love you, I do. But I've been confused. I've made mistakes. I could feel my heart harden as I read her words. She didn't even see me anymore. I was just an afterthought in her grand scheme, a side character in her life's drama. If she truly loved me, she wouldn't have said those things. She wouldn't have kept me as a temporary option. I sat there for a long time, reading her message over and over, trying to understand how I had missed it all. How had I missed the signs? How had I been so blind? And then it hit me. She didn't just betray me. She betrayed the life we had built together, the family we created. I deleted the email and turned my phone off. There was nothing more to say. I knew I couldn't go back. Not after everything I had heard. Not after everything I now knew. I needed space. I needed time to figure out what came next. But then, as I walked out of the motel room to get some fresh air, I saw something that made my heart stop. A car pulled into the parking lot. It wasn't anything special, but I recognized it instantly. It was Mara's car. My heart raced. What was she doing here? How did she find me? Had she followed me? I froze, not knowing what to do. The urge to confront her, to ask her why, to scream at her for everything, was overwhelming. But I knew that wouldn't fix anything. It would only make it worse. I watched from a distance as Mara stepped out of her car. She looked different, nervous, as if she wasn't sure what she was going to say. She walked slowly, looking around, then paused. She seemed to hesitate before walking toward the motel lobby. I had no idea what she wanted. But I also knew one thing. Whatever happened next, it wasn't going to be pretty. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest, as Mara walked towards the motel lobby. I had no idea what she was doing here. I hadn't told her where I was staying. How had she found me? The possibility of a confrontation filled me with a cold sense of dread, but a part of me also wanted answers, wanted closure. The woman I had once known seemed like a stranger now, and I needed to understand how she could have become someone so unrecognizable. I tried to stay calm, to think, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was only here for one reason, to beg for forgiveness, to try and manipulate her way back into my life. I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. Part of me wanted to turn away, to walk in the opposite direction, but I couldn't. I was rooted to the spot, watching her every move. Mara stopped at the front desk, talking to the clerk for a moment before she disappeared through the door leading to the small motel's office. I couldn't just sit here anymore, not with all these questions swirling in my head. I stood up, but my legs felt weak, unsteady. Was I really about to face her? Was I prepared to hear what she had to say after everything? I stepped cautiously toward the office entrance, my footsteps muffled on the carpet. I wasn't sure what I expected to happen, but a part of me felt like I was stepping into a trap of my own making. A minute later, I stood just outside the office door, peering through the narrow crack, watching her. Mara was pacing the small room, her face a mask of anxiety. She hadn't noticed me yet, and I debated whether I should just walk away. But then she spoke, her voice low and urgent, as if she were talking to herself. "I can't believe this is happening," she muttered. "I didn't want him to find out like this. This isn't how I planned it. This wasn't supposed to be how things went." My pulse quickened. I had always wondered what she was thinking, what was going on in her mind. But hearing her say these words, hearing the guilt in her voice, made something shift inside me. She knew exactly what she had done. She knew how deeply she had hurt me, and yet here she was, trying to justify it to herself. She stopped pacing and looked down at her phone. Her fingers hovered over the screen, and I realized she was drafting a message. The words were typed out quickly, and I caught a glimpse of them. "Please forgive me. I love you, I do. I'm so sorry. I just need you to understand. I wasn't happy." My stomach twisted as I read those words. She was trying to rewrite everything that had happened, trying to make it sound like it was my fault, like I wasn't enough for her. I had given everything, and now she was asking for forgiveness, as if it was that simple. Before I could even think, I heard the door to the office open, and Mara stepped out, phone still in her hand. I quickly ducked behind a pillar, holding my breath, praying she didn't see me. She walked past, her head down, absorbed in her phone. I could feel my heart pounding in my throat. I was so close. I could walk up to her right now and confront her, but I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. She paused for a moment, standing near the motel's entrance, glancing around. For a brief second, her eyes flickered to where I was hiding, and I could have sworn she recognized me. She didn't call out, though. She just stood there, as if waiting for something, her back to me, lost in thought. I stayed perfectly still, wondering what the next move would be. What did she want from me? What was she expecting? I felt a surge of anger, not at her for coming here, but at myself. Why was I still so obsessed with her, still tied to this woman who had made me feel like I wasn't enough? I could have walked away, turned around, and never looked back. But the truth was, I wasn't ready for that yet. I wasn't ready to just walk away from everything. I couldn't. Mara sighed deeply, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of the situation was finally settling in. She slowly typed a message, hit send, and then looked up again, scanning the area as if expecting someone. Expecting me, maybe. I could almost feel the tension in the air, the quiet anticipation that hung between us. I knew I had to make a decision. Was I going to stay hidden and let her go, or was I finally going to face her? Without thinking, I took a step forward. I stepped out from behind the pillar before I could second-guess myself. The soft sound of my footsteps echoed in the quiet motel hallway, and Mara looked up just as I moved into her line of sight. Her eyes widened in shock, her phone still held loosely in her hand. "Evan," she whispered, her voice barely audible, like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "What? What are you doing here?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I took a long, steadying breath, trying to calm the racing thoughts in my head. I had never imagined that our confrontation would come like this. Unexpected, raw, with no rehearsed lines, no plan for what I would say. But now that I was here, standing in front of her, I realized there was nothing left to say. "Is it true?" I asked, the words coming out more calmly than I expected. "Is it true that I was just a temporary option?" The color drained from her face. She took a step back, her eyes darting between my face and the floor. "Evan, please. Don't lie to me." I interrupted, my voice colder now. "You said it. I heard you. You've been lying to me. To us. For how long, Mara? How long were you planning this?" She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out at first. The guilt in her eyes was unmistakable, but so was the defensiveness that followed. "I didn't want you to find out this way. I never meant for you to. Don't make excuses," I snapped, the anger bubbling up inside me. "How could you do this? How could you sit there, day after day, pretending everything was fine, knowing you were planning to leave me, knowing I wasn't enough for you?" She winced, her shoulders slumping. "I wasn't. I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But it's true. I've been unhappy, and I didn't know what to do about it. I thought I could fix it, make it work, but I couldn't. Not anymore. The words hit me harder than I expected. The pain wasn't just in the betrayal. It was the realization that everything we had built, everything I thought we shared, meant so little to her. You think I'm just some backup? Some placeholder? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but the hurt was there, leaking through. That's what you think of me. I never meant for it to be that way, Mara said quickly, but I could hear the cracks in her voice now. I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know how to fix it. I don't know what happened. I shook my head. No, you don't get to say that. You don't get to pretend like this was some mistake. You knew exactly what you were doing. You just didn't care enough to stop. Her eyes welled with tears, and she stepped closer, as if reaching out to me. Evan, I'm sorry. Please, I didn't want to lose you. I thought I could fix everything before it came to this. I thought you wouldn't. I thought you wouldn't know. I took a step back, shaking my head. No, it's too late for apologies. She stared at me, her face filled with a mix of regret and desperation. Please, I never meant for you to find out like this. I don't know how to fix it, but I want to try. I want to make it right. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Part of me wanted to take her in my arms, to believe the tears and the apology. But another part of me, the part that was still raw and broken, knew I couldn't go back. Not after everything. I looked at her one last time, my chest tight. You already made your choice, Mara. And so have I. With that, I turned and walked away, not looking back. She called my name once, softly, but I didn't stop. The sound of her voice seemed distant now, fading with every step I took. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I don't remember much of the drive after I left the motel, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My mind was a blur, a jumble of anger, hurt, and disbelief. The conversation with Mara had been a wake-up call, but it also left me feeling strangely hollow. I had confronted her, heard the apology, but it wasn't enough. It could never be enough. As I drove aimlessly through the city streets, I realized that I didn't even know where I was going. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, maybe answers, maybe a way to make sense of everything. But deep down, I knew that the truth had already been revealed. Mara had made her choices, and I had been nothing more than an afterthought in her life. I ended up at a small park, a place I used to visit when I needed to clear my head. I parked the car and sat there for a while, staring at the empty swings, the stillness of the night settling over me. I never thought I'd find myself here, not like this. Alone, questioning everything. The silence was deafening. There was no comfort in the memories of the park, no warmth in the spaces we had once shared. It was just me now. I pulled out my phone and hesitated for a moment, looking at the texts from Mara that had piled up over the last few hours. Please talk to me, one message said. I'm sorry, I never meant for it to be this way. I could see her desperation in every word, but I didn't feel any of the old affection I once had. Instead, all I felt was the sting of betrayal. I deleted every message, not caring about the consequences, not caring about what she might think. The decision had been made. She didn't deserve another chance. I closed my eyes and leaned my head against the headrest, trying to breathe through the ache in my chest. It wasn't just about the affair, the lies. It was about the years I had spent with her, believing in a future that no longer existed. It was about the trust that had been shattered, the foundation of our entire relationship crumbling in an instant. In that moment, I realized something. I wasn't just walking away from her. I was walking away from everything. From the life I thought I would have. From the family I had worked so hard to build. But the pain was too much to ignore. The betrayal too raw. I couldn't keep pretending that things could go back to the way they were. As I sat in the dark, the weight of it all finally hit me. I wasn't just angry anymore. I wasn't just hurt. I was free. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't tied down by the past. I wasn't looking for forgiveness. I wasn't begging for answers. I was just done. And I knew, deep down, that I had made the right choice. The following days blurred together in a haze of emotion. I kept myself busy, distracting myself with anything I could, work, errands, even random projects I'd put off for ages. But every time I paused for even a second, the pain would come rushing back. It wasn't just the betrayal. It wasn't just the fact that Mara had been seeing someone else. It was the quiet realization that the life I thought I was living, the future I thought I was building, had all been a lie. I spent most of my days avoiding the apartment. I didn't want to go back there, not yet. I couldn't face the empty space, the ghost of the life I had with her. My thoughts were too scattered, too fractured to even attempt something resembling normalcy. I knew I needed to make a decision about what came next, about how to move forward, even though it felt impossible. Then, as I sat alone in a coffee shop, sipping on my drink and staring blankly at the people coming and going, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something in my gut told me it was her. I stared at the screen for a moment, wondering if I should just ignore it, to keep running from the inevitable confrontation. But there was something about it that pulled me in. I answered. Evan. Mara's voice came through the line, shaky but familiar. Please talk to me. I can't do this alone. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. It was the first time since the confrontation that she'd called. Her voice was desperate, pleading, and yet it held a trace of something else, something darker. I had no idea what she was feeling in that moment. The woman who had once been my partner now sounded like a stranger, but her vulnerability made me hesitate. What do you want, Mara? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I wasn't sure if I was ready for this conversation, but I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. I need you to listen to me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've made a mess of everything, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve anything, but I'm begging you. Please, just let me explain. Let me tell you what happened. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes. I didn't want to listen. I didn't want to hear her excuses. But a part of me still cared. A part of me wanted to understand. I wanted to know how we got here, how everything went so terribly wrong. You've already explained, Mara, I said, my tone sharper than I intended. You made your choice. You're with someone else, and I'm just supposed to accept that? I'm supposed to let you explain away the fact that you've been lying to me for months? How do you expect me to just forget about that? There was silence on the other end for a long moment. Then, she spoke again, her voice trembling. I don't expect you to forget. I don't expect anything. But I do need you to understand that I didn't mean for this to happen. I was confused, lost. I thought I could fix things, but I couldn't. I didn't know how to fix us. Fix us, I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. You don't get to fix anything. You've already torn it all apart. I know, she said, and I could hear the regret in her voice. And I hate myself for it. But I never wanted to hurt you. Not like this. I swear. For a moment, I felt the familiar tug of sympathy, the echo of the love we once shared. But that voice inside me, the one that had been quiet for days, started to speak up. She doesn't deserve my sympathy. She doesn't deserve another chance. I swallowed the words that were threatening to spill out, forcing myself to stay focused. I don't want your apology, Mara, I said. I don't want to hear it. What you've done. I can't just forgive that. Not like this. Not when you've already made your choice. I haven't made my choice, she insisted, her voice growing more desperate. I swear I haven't. I've been confused, and I know that doesn't make it right. But I was just trying to figure things out. I need you, Evan. Please don't leave me like this. I was silent for a long time, staring out the window at the busy street outside, the noise of the world contrasting with the stillness inside me. I had no answers. No easy solution. There was no going back to the way things were. But I also couldn't ignore the history we had, the life we'd built together. Why did you do it? I asked finally, my voice barely audible. Why did you let me believe everything was fine when it wasn't? Mara's voice cracked. I don't know, Evan. I don't have a good answer. I thought I could make it work. I thought I could keep pretending. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't know what to say to that. I was still angry, still hurt, but in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about her mistake. This was about me, too. It was about my own failure to see the signs, to confront the truth sooner. I need space, I said finally, my voice firm. I can't do this right now. I can't talk to you. Not like this. There was a long pause before she spoke again, quieter this time. I understand. I'm sorry, Evan. I really am. I hung up the phone before she could say anything else. I didn't want to think about what she said anymore. I didn't want to wonder what might have been, or if we could have made it work. I had to let go. For the first time in days, I felt a small sense of peace. It wasn't the peace of forgiveness or of reconciliation. It was the peace of finally choosing myself. I spent the next few days in a fog. The days blurred into one another, filled with restless sleep and long hours spent thinking about everything and nothing at all. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting back to Mara. The phone call still lingered in my thoughts, her desperate voice echoing in my head. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that nothing in my life was what I thought it was. I had been living a lie, and now I was left to pick up the pieces. I had decided to keep my distance. No more conversations with her. No more waiting for her to make things right. I had to focus on myself, on rebuilding whatever I had left. But then came the knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I hadn't told anyone where I was staying, not even my closest friends. When I opened the door, I froze. There she was, Mara, standing on the other side, looking smaller than I remembered. Her eyes were red, like she had been crying for days, and her hair was messier than usual, as if she had been running through her own chaos. She stood there for a moment, as if unsure whether to speak, her hands nervously tugging at the sleeves of her jacket. I felt a knot form in my stomach. The anger I thought had faded resurfaced in an instant. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want her here. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice tight. I had to see you," Mara said, her voice cracking. She took a step forward, but I didn't move. "Please, Evan, just let me explain. I need to tell you everything. I can't keep living like this." I shook my head, feeling the weight of her words press against me. "You've said enough, Mara. You've told me everything I need to know. What more could you possibly say that will change anything?" Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I saw the woman I had loved. The woman who had once been my partner in everything. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve anything from you. But I can't keep going without at least trying. I need to make things right, Evan. Please. I can't live with this guilt." I stood there in silence, my emotions a storm inside me. I wanted to slam the door in her face, tell her to leave and never come back. But something held me there. Something in her voice, in her eyes, made me hesitate. "You've already destroyed everything, Mara," I said quietly, the words barely escaping my lips. "There's nothing left to fix." "I didn't mean for this to happen," she pleaded. "You don't know how much I regret it. I was selfish. I thought I could have it all, and I ruined everything." For a long moment, I didn't know what to say. I could see how broken she was, but I didn't know if that was enough to forgive her. I didn't know if anything could fix what had been broken between us. But then, something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the raw honesty in her eyes, or maybe it was the feeling of being completely exhausted by the whole situation. Either way, I stepped back, allowing her to enter. "What do you want from me, Mara?" I asked, my voice softer now, though the bitterness still lingered. She took a deep breath, wiping her eyes. "I don't want you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve that. I want to make sure you know that I am so sorry. I want you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. I've spent every day regretting what I did." I didn't know how to respond. It wasn't that I didn't hear her, or that I didn't see her pain. But what did it matter now? What did any of it matter when the trust was gone? When everything we had built was reduced to this? Mara reached out, and I felt a pang in my chest, a tiny flicker of the love that had once been there. But it was so faint, so distant, that it almost felt unreal. "I don't know if I can do this," I said finally. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't even know if I want to try." The silence between us stretched for what felt like hours. Neither of us moved, both of us caught in the weight of what had happened, the decisions we had made, the paths we had taken. And in that silence, I realized something. She had already made her choice. And so had I. Days passed after Mara's visit. I spent a lot of time in solitude, reflecting on the life I had once shared with her and the person I had become in the process. The anger, the hurt, the confusion, they all began to fade slowly. I wasn't just letting go of Mara. I was letting go of the version of myself that had been consumed by the pain of betrayal. I had spent too long questioning my worth, doubting my strength. But no more. It was time to rebuild. I focused on myself for the first time in years. I spent more time with friends I had neglected, went to the gym, reconnected with old hobbies I had abandoned. The weight I had been carrying for so long began to lift. I found peace in the little things, in the morning sunlight, in a good book, in laughter that didn't feel forced. But there was something else I did, something I didn't expect. I began to change my relationship with Mara, but not in the way she might have wanted. She continued to reach out, sending me texts, leaving voice messages, always apologizing, always begging for another chance. But every time I read her messages, I felt nothing but indifference. I had moved on. I had learned that forgiveness wasn't always about giving the other person a chance. Sometimes, it was about letting go of the power they had over you. And Mara no longer had that power. Then, one evening, I received a text from an old friend, Jake. He worked with Mara and had known about the affair for a while. We hadn't talked much recently, but he knew the situation well. He'd always been a straight shooter, someone I could trust. I don't know if you've heard, but Mara's been seeing someone else again, the message said. I know it's none of my business, but I thought you should know. It wasn't the first time I had heard rumors, but this time, it felt different. The text wasn't just gossip, it was a subtle warning. Jake told me that Mara's relationship had been escalating, that her affair was no longer a secret, and that her so-called temporary option had become a full-blown, public affair. That night, I felt a strange sense of calm. I didn't need to do anything. I didn't need to confront her or seek revenge. Life had a way of handling things without my interference. It wasn't long before the fallout began. Mara's new relationship, the one she had so confidently told me was nothing serious, became the talk of the office, and eventually, the community. People started to see her for what she really was. The lies and deceit she had lived with for so long were no longer hidden. Her carefully curated image of the perfect wife and mother shattered when the truth came out. She lost friends. She lost the respect of her colleagues. And worst of all, she lost the life she thought she had built, all because she couldn't stop playing with fire. Meanwhile, my life was moving forward. I had started to date again, slowly, cautiously, but with a sense of freedom I had never known before. I met someone who truly valued me for who I was, not for the role I could play in their life. And that was the most healing thing of all, realizing that I deserved love without conditions, without strings attached. Mara eventually reached out one last time. It had been months since we last spoke, and I could tell by her message that she had finally hit rock bottom. She apologized again, asking for forgiveness. This time, her tone was different. It wasn't about wanting me back. It was about seeking validation, trying to make herself feel better after everything had unraveled. I didn't respond. Instead, I deleted the message and blocked her number. I had done enough healing. I had done enough for her. It was time for me to fully close that chapter of my life. In the end, I learned that karma didn't need me to lift a finger. It had already started to work in ways I couldn't have imagined. The best revenge, I realized, was living well. It was thriving in the life I had fought so hard to reclaim. And as for Mara, her actions had caught up with her, not because I wanted them to, but because the truth always finds a way to the surface. I was no longer defined by my past. I was free. And that freedom? That was the sweetest form of justice. Please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all.